Canadians were allotted a beach in between the two British beaches called Juno Beach. And the 3rd Canadian Division had been assigned to make this assault and, like the British, capture Caen. The Canadians spent a long time in preparation for this. They were training all over Scotland, training all over Britain, and this training paid off because of all the assaults on D-Day, Juno worked the best.
When the Canadians conducted their post-amphibious landings on Juno, they landed in the area around a seaside fishing village called Courseulles-sur-Mer. And the area around the village, the mouth of the river, on both the east and west side, were heavily defended by German Widerstandsnest, or resistance nests, strong points. The result of which was that the Canadians came under heavy fire during the final run-in of the first wave toward the beach. On the beachhead itself, the Canadians endured heavy opposition, and the loss of life among the Royal Winnipeg Rifles, for example, was extremely high.
On June 6, 1944, this particular part of Normandy was the Mike Green sector of Juno Beach. This was an objective of B Company, the Royal Winnipeg Rifles, part of the Canadian 3rd Division. This particular casemate was assigned to 10 Platoon, commanded by Lieutenant William F. Cozy Aitken. Aitken's LCA was hung up on an obstacle far out into the water, and he and his men had to wade into shore to attack this particular bunker. Cozy led a force of Royal Winnipeg Rifles as well as Royal Canadian Engineers. Eventually, Cozy and his men did take this position, but in the process, William F. Cozy Aitken was grievously wounded. Today, this structure is called Cozy's Bunker.
For the Canadians landing on Juno Beach, fighting side by side with the short magazine Lee Enfield rifle, is the Mark II Sten submachine gun. Still in the Mark II version, although the Airborne had the product improved version, Mark V, the Canadians are still fighting with the Mark II Sten with its 32-round detachable box magazine, firing the 9mm cartridge. The Sten is a completely reliable firearm. If there's one shortcoming to the design of the Sten submachine gun, it's the fact that it is a double-stack single-feed magazine, meaning that you have cartridges double stacked inside the magazine and they have to merge as they approach the feed lips into one column. If Stens ever developed a difficulty, if they ever experienced a malfunction, 9 times out of 10 that malfunction was produced by the magazines. If you overload Sten magazines, sometimes the spring tension won't be enough to overcome the magazine spring tension. Other than that one shortcoming, the Sten was an extremely successful and effective firearm.
This part of Juno Beach was assaulted by B Company of the Royal Winnipeg Rifles. One of the men making that attack was Al Williams. He exited the LCA, immediately into deep water, and he was hit in the left arm, forcing him to drop his mortar. Williams continued to move forward towards the beach, and he was hit again, this time in the foot. As he was laying in the sand, German machine gun fire was sweeping the beach. At that point, Corporal Walter Bull Kloss came and grabbed Williams by his equipment straps and pulled him to safety. Corporal Kloss was already wounded. He had been hit out in the water and he was holding his intestines in. He had also been hit again. After he dragged Williams to safety, he came up the dune and assaulted in a dedicated attack this very bunker. The machine gun fire from here ceased. When the company finally got to this position, they found 2 dead Germans in the bunker, and they found Corporal Kloss with his hands around the neck of a 3rd German. The German was dead, but sadly, so was Bull Kloss.
When the British landed on Gold Beach, they had one heck of a fight on their hands. Gold Beach was in between Omaha Beach, where the Americans 29th and 1st Division were fighting, and next door, Juno Beach, where the Canadian Corps was fighting. But at Gold Beach, the British were facing the same kind of obstacles that the Americans were facing next door at Omaha Beach.
In the vicinity of a coastal town called Héroism-les-Bains, the British 50th Infantry Division conducted the post-amphibious landings on June 6th. 50th Division landed in this area with a series of objectives, one of which was to overcome immediate beach defenses. One regiment from the 50th Division, a regiment called the Green Howards, was to conduct the landing, move into the interior, sweep up a hillside called Mont Fleury, attack a German coastal strongpoint that was at the top of the hill, and then push on beyond that into the interior toward a village called Crépon. Among the men of the Green Howards who landed that day was a sergeant major named Stanley Hollis. Hollis, by this point of the war, was a very experienced soldier. And what follows Stan Hollis from the moment he sets foot on French soil up to and beyond the village of Crépon are a series of actions that are extraordinary.
Now, Hollis had been in the Army the entire war. As a matter of fact, he was evacuated from Dunkirk. He had fought in North Africa. He had fought in Sicily. He was a very accomplished soldier, and it's said that he had killed 90 Germans before D-Day. As the Green Howards were approaching the beach, they were taking fire from German defensive positions. Stanley Hollis, being the kind of soldier that he was, grabbed a stripped Lewis gun and returned fire on the Germans, firing an entire pan from the Lewis. And that's just the first gun that Stan Hollis used on June 6, 1944. As the Green Howards continued to move inland towards their objectives for the day, leading platoons from the battalion moved past a bunker complex. And that's when a Spandau machine gun opened up on the leading elements of his battalion. Stan Hollis saw this, and he ran 50 yards, firing his Sten gun from the hip all the way up to the embrasure. He put the gun into the slit, emptied the gun, and followed it with a hand grenade. Hollis then ran around into the entrance of the bunker and took 2 Germans prisoner there. But that wasn't all he did. There was a trench leading to another position. Hollis followed that trench and assaulted a second German bunker, taking 18 more prisoners. But even that action, which would earn him the Victoria Cross, wasn't enough for Stan Hollis. No, there was a lot more fight in him that day. As the Green Howards continued to move inland, Stan Hollis investigated a farmhouse. In it, he found a 10-year-old boy, but he also took fire. A round hit near his head, and he looked for the source of the fire. What he saw was a hedge, and he saw some movement, and he determined wagging tails of dogs. He knew the Germans were there. He crept up so that he could see, and sure enough, it was a German anti-tank gun. He went to Major Lofton, his company commander, and asked for permission to deal with it. How would you deal with something like that? Well, I'd say the PIAT, the Projector Infantry Anti-Tank, is a pretty good start. It was the endemic anti-tank weapon of the British infantry platoon. It's not like a bazooka, it's actually a spigot mortar that throws a shaped charge. Hollis and his 2 Bren gunners crawled through this rhubarb field until Hollis could get a shot. He fired the PIAT, didn't take out the anti-tank gun, and then the great maw of that barrel turned towards him, and Hollis ordered a retreat to go back and report to Major Lofton. As Hollis was retreating, he heard Bren gun fire behind him. The 2 men were no longer with him. Both his Bren gunners were wounded. So what did Stan Hollis do? He grabbed another Bren gun and ended up charging the German position and getting those 2 men out of there. He later said, "I got them in there, I'm going to get them out." On June 6, 1944, Stanley Hollis was always at the thick of the fighting. His personal courage and leadership resulted in far fewer casualties for his battalion. For his intrepidity and his gallantry, he was awarded the only Victoria Cross on D-Day.